Okay, so today's topic is UI Dialog. So one of the topics that we cover as part of how to build UI. Slide number 3, so topics. We're going to just cover what is a dialog, and we'll cover the types of dialog boxes. And two types of dialog boxes that we are going to cover include alert and progress dialog boxes. And then we are also going to learn how to create custom dialog. So what is a dialog? So I assume everybody knows what the dialog is. It's usually a small window that appears in front of the current activity. And what's interesting is once the dialog is open, dialog is the one that actually accepts all user interactions, meaning underlying activity loses focus. So dialog boxes are typically used for notifications and things like that. So types of dialog boxes, again, alert, progress, and there are special dialog boxes, date picker and time picker dialog boxes. So let's talk about alert dialog. So alert dialog is an extension of dialog class, and so alert dialog is supposed to satisfy most of the dialog needs. So in fact, it's suggested dialog type. So the things you can set with alert dialog is you can set a title, of course, and you can set whether it's cancelable or not, and you can set a text message, and then you can have up to 3 buttons. And also you can have a different look and feel, a different format, a list of selectable items, checkboxes and radio buttons. And we'll actually take a look at these options in the hands-on lab. So how do you create alert dialog? It's pretty simple. You get a builder object by calling alert dialog builder static method, passing context object, and then you get the builder object, and you are going to build the alert first, and then you are going to call create method to actually create the dialog. So let's see the code. So slide number 9. So we are trying to create the dialog that you see on the bottom of the slide. So it asks you whether are you sure you want to exit or not. This is the text message, and then it has yes or no, the choices. So on the top you see we have builder object by calling alert dialog.builder static method. Once you got the builder object, we can call builder method. So we are basically building a dialog. So you can set message, you can set the flag for cancellation or not, and then you can set buttons in this case. So you set positive button and negative button. And we also use anonymous in a class for handling the other case when a button is clicked. So here, when yes button is clicked, we are calling onClick method of the onClick listener. This is anonymous in a class. And same thing for no button. I think I talked about the concept of anonymous in a class sometime. I'm not sure this is in fact the this course or not. How many of you have a reasonably good idea on how to construct anonymous in a class? Anybody has written anonymous class in the past? Anyway, so if you are not familiar with the anonymous inner class, take a look at the the inner class presentation of Java programming course. Okay. Yeah, so inner class concept is pretty much the same for all the languages, yes. Okay, so let's move on. Slide number 10. So here we are going to create alert dialog. Here you can see we are using a list form. So we have items, character sequence items, it's like a strings. And then we again have a build object, then we build the dialog, we set the title, and then we set the items. So we call set items and passing items, and again we are using anonymous class, and this onClick method will be invoked when one of these items in the list is selected. Slide number 11. So this is the case that we are having the single choice items. So we are calling set single choice items. So user is able to select one of these choices. Moving forward, progress dialog. So I'm sure everyone have seen progress dialog. So progress dialog is an extension of alert dialog class that can display a progress in the form of either spinning wheel, so that's something you see on the left of the slide on the bottom, and or progress bar, and something you see, and this is something you see in the form of progress bar, progress dialog. And it can also have buttons such as cancellation. So how to create progress bar dialogs is pretty straightforward. You are going to call, you are going to create progress dialog as a typical way of creating an object using new keyword, and then you basically set the progress style. So here you can set one of those two styles, and then you can set the message, and you can also set cancellation or not flag. Moving forward, so we are going to actually take a look at how the whole thing works together when we actually see the hands-on lab. So I feel like I'm explaining thing in a piecemeal basis, not giving you a complete picture. But when we do the hands-on lab, it will have a bigger picture, so you will have a better understanding. Okay, so how to create a custom dialog. So far we've been working with dialogs, the alert and progress, the dialog boxes that are actually provided by the Android platform. Here we are going to learn how to create a custom dialog. So suppose if you want to create a custom dialog on the bottom of the slide. So here we have custom dialog message, and then we have the Duke image, and then you have a text. Hello, this is a custom dialog. So the steps that you take for creating a custom dialog is pretty straightforward. Step number 1, you are going to create an XML layout. So this XML layout is used to provide a layout for your dialog. Okay, because dialog is kind of UI, so we need to have a layout that describes that the UI, in which you're going to have the view components. In this case, you can see we have text view, and then we have image view. Okay, and then you're going to set the above layout in the dialog's content view. So, and then define the contents of view elements, and then show the dialog. So this is pretty straightforward steps. Again, we'll take a look at this step in a bit more detail when we take a look at the hands-on lab. Okay, so step number 1, so you create XML layout for describing the layout for that dialog. So as you can see, we are using linear layout, and then we have image view. So this is the Duke image, and then we have text view. Okay, so you have to set these things. So this is just a layout, and you have to see actual contents of this image view and text view. So this is the code. So you create dialog object, and then you're going to set the content view of the dialog with a layout. Okay, so this is, we are using that layout to set the content view of the dialog, and we set the title. And then we set the contents of the view component. So what we have done here is basically reading the layout, but we haven't really set the contents of the view components. In this case, text view and image view. So for text view, we have to set the actual text. So we get the text object by calling find view by ID on the dialog box, and then we set the text. In terms of image view, we do the same thing. So we get the image view object, and then we call set image resource by providing resource object. Okay. In terms of how to display, how this dialog box get displayed, we'll actually see that in the hands-on lab. Okay, so this is rather short presentation. So let's take a look at the hands-on lab documentation. So exercise 1, 2, 3, building for alert dialogues. The first one with 1, 2, 3 buttons. The second is for with the checkboxes, and third is with the list form. And exercise 4 and 5, 6 for building progress dialog, and then exercise 7 is time ticker dialog, and exercise 8 we are going to see how we can create a custom dialog. Okay, so let's move on to exercise 1. So dialog alert dialog buttons. So when you run the application, you are going to see this page gets displayed. Okay, so this is a button, so we click this button to display alert dialog. Click this guy, and then you get this alert dialog in which you have two buttons, yes or no. So for now, if you click yes, it will exit out. So we're gonna just try no first. So if you click no, it will cancel this dialog box, so it will go back. Okay, so this time we click it again, and this time we will click yes, and it will exit out. Okay, so that's the behavior. So relatively straightforward behavior. So let's see the code. Okay, so we have a button, right, that will be clicked. So when that button is clicked, this is what happens. Okay, so when button is clicked, we are going to create a dialog box. So again, we create a builder object. Okay, and this is one way of passing your context object. As we talked about, activity class itself is an extension of extension of context, the class. So you can just say my button activity dot this. So this is a context object. Okay, so once you got the builder object, then we can set the message, and then we set two buttons, positive button and negative button. Now when yes button is clicked, the behavior that we want is we are going to finish this activity. So when you call the finish method of an activity, it basically finish that activity. So that's the reason we go back to home screen, because nothing is on the stack anymore from this activity. If cancel is if no button is clicked, then we are canceling the dialog. So we go back to previous activity. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so layout resource file is nothing really out of ordinary. So we are going to add another button. So all you have to do is set neutral. Well, actually, you can have up to 3 buttons. Okay, so if you want to have a neutral button, then you call set neutral button, and you provide whatever text you want. and then again we can do anything we want. Okay, so when we run that application, we see the button that we just added. Okay, so that's relatively straightforward. Exercise 2, instead of yes or no buttons, we are going to use checkboxes. So when you click the button, you're going to see alert dialog with the checkboxes. Okay, so user can select one of these three choices. So when you select it, we just display a toast message. Okay, so let's see the code. So again, we have a button. When the button is clicked, we are creating dialog. So this time we have a set of character sequence items, and again we are calling set single choice items with items. And in the toast message, we basically said you picked that item that was selected. Okay, so we are going to add another item like orange, and there is nothing much else you do here, and then you're going to see that orange is being displayed as well. Exercise 3 is for the displaying alert dialog with a list. So what we have seen so far is displaying alert dialog with yes or no buttons and the checkboxes. Now we are going to see how we can have alert dialog with a list. So when you click the button, we get the list of things. Okay. So when the user select item from the list, we have a toast message displaying what has been selected. So there is nothing really complex here. So here we call set items method, passing items. Okay, so it's not bad. Let's move on to progress dialog. So exercise 4 and 5, you can actually create progress dialog either under control of activity or not under the activity control. So this is a case that you are creating progress dialog not under activity control, meaning you create yourself. Okay. Later on in exercise 5, you are going to see how you can create progress dialog under activity control. And basically you are overriding on create dialog int callback method in your activity class, and that is being called when progress dialog, when the show dialog method is actually being called. So that's something we're going to actually talk about later in exercise 5. So here we are creating progress dialog box not on the activity control. So the reason you want to create, in most cases, on the activity control is if you create it on the activity control, then it will actually inherit properties of that parent activity. So the when dialog is open, the menu key is pressed, and the in fact menu will be displayed on the bottom, as we actually learned last time. Is because progress dialog is on the activity control. If you create progress dialog not on the activity control, then that activity related things will not be supported. Okay, so this is not on the activity control. So when you press the button, and it's just loading this progress bar. So here, when you in fact press the menu key, nothing will show up. Okay. So in terms of creating this progress bar, it's again not under activity control. So when the button is clicked, we are creating progress bar ourselves. So we create the progress dialog and using a new keyword, and we set the progress style. So this horizontal, and we set the message, and we set the cancelable or not. Then we finally call show method. Okay, yeah, so this is something I guess I haven't really talked about in detail in the presentation. So once you got the dialog, that you have to call show to actually show it. Okay, so modification. So here we are displaying spinner progress dialog instead of horizontal. So in that case, so this is Java documentation. You can see that from context-sensitive Java docking activity, and this is what you get. So this is spinner. Okay, so exercise 5 is creating progress dialog under the control of activity class. Okay, so let me actually show the code. It's probably easier. So it works pretty much the same, except this time if you press the menu key, then you will actually see the menus. Well, assuming you have a menu items implemented. In this sample application, it's not implemented, so it probably doesn't happen. Okay, but if you have implemented the menu key, the option key menu items, the new activity, then when this is clicked, that will be shown here. Okay. Okay, so it works pretty much the same as exercise 4. Okay, but let's see the code. Now, what happens is this: when a user say, "I want to create," I mean, when the user click a button, it's going to call show dialog method. Okay, so this is from activity class, and then you pass the progress dialog. Okay, and then at that point, Android platform will call a callback method called onCreateDialog. Okay, so this is being called in the context of an activity. So this is reason why we say now here we are actually creating progress dialog. Okay, so here we are creating progress dialog under the context of activity. So that's what we are talking about here. All the messages, the description here. Okay, so when the user click this one, it just calls show dialog method. So this is from Android APIs. It's not yours. Okay, and when you call it with the NID, unique ID, and then Android platform will call this callback method, and you have to override. You have to provide this callback method in your activity class, and then based on that ID, you are going to progress dialog, and then you are going to return it. And the return dialog will be used by the Android platform to show it. Okay. So when this method is called, this callback method is invoked by the Android platform. This callback method returns the dialog box, and then Android platform will display the dialog. Does that make sense? Okay, so this is how you create progress dialog under the context of activity. Okay, so that's the difference between exercise 4 and 5. So exercise 4, as we have seen before, we are creating the progress dialog ourselves, okay, directly. But in exercise 5, we are creating under a callback method of onCreateDialog. See the difference between exercise 4 and 5? So exercise 4 is creating progress dialog box, not under the activity context, and here we are creating under the context of activity. Okay, so moving forward. So you can take a look at the Java doc of show dialog, and it actually describes what's happening underneath. And that's what I just described. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to just move ahead. And you can modify it so that you display spinner. So here, I have progress dialog. So progress dialog spinner equals 1, and this is 0. So here, I am passing. Oh, I have actually two buttons. Okay, looks like. So I have created two buttons, and the first button is creating the regular horizontal progress bar, and the second button is creating spinner. Okay, but we are creating those dialogs under still onCreateDialog callback method, okay, which is called by the Android platform. and we add a button, and then a message, and when you run the application, you get two buttons. So this is for creating progress bar, the dialog, and here we are creating spinner progress dialog, like this. Okay, so when you do create progress bar, obviously it's not interesting if the progress bar does not reflect the current progress. Okay, so exercise 5 is basically creating progress bar, but it doesn't actually do anything. It's not really reflecting current progress. So exercise 6, we are going to update the progress bar, the progress with some data. So it will in fact change. Okay. So when you run the application, click it, and you're going to see this progress bar is changing, is reflecting the percentage. Okay. So every second, well, I'm not sure it's every second or every 100 millisecond or something, it will change. Okay. So let's see how we do it. Here we're basically using a thread that simulate some kind of business process, and that will send some message to this progress bar, in the form of integer value, and that integer value is used to set progress of this progress bar. So let's see the code. So again, we are using the show dialog method to create a dialog box under this onCreate dialog. So now when we create this progress bar dialog, so this is something that we have seen. Another thing that we are doing is we are going to create a thread. Okay, so this is a way of the simulating a business process, business logic that that does something, and that will actually give the progress bar some value. Now, so we are going to create a new thread called the progress thread. Okay. Now, one thing that is important to understand is we are passing what is called the handler object. So let's see how handler object gets created. So we actually create a handler object here, and so handler object gets created, and handler has handle message method. Okay, and this handle message will be invoked this handle message will receive a message. So this handle message is basically take a look at the pass message, and this pass message will actually have what is called total value, and that shows the progress. And then we are going to call set progress method of dialog. So that set progress is built-in method of progress dialog box class, and you pass the value, and that will be used to set the progress. Okay, so we'll see who's actually passing this the message later on, but for now just understand that when we are creating new thread, we are also passing this handler object. Okay, all right, so this is the thread. So when this thread gets started here, so thread is getting started when the progress bar object gets created, when the progress dialog box gets created. So what it does is just keep running. So it's just running, and it just sleeps every 100 milliseconds, and then it will get the message object from the handler. So remember that the handler object gets passed as an initial parameter when the thread is created, right? So it has an access to the handler object, right? So it's going to call obtain message method of handler object to get the message. So and then we create a bundle object, and then we set the key value pair of total. So bundle you can think of is like a map of key value pairs. So we are just using only one key value pair, which is total and total value, and this total value will be incremented every 100 millisecond. Okay, so and then we call the set data method of the message. So here we're basically creating a message in which we are passing this total value, which is being incremented every 100 millisecond. And then we are going to call send message method to handler. So you can think of handler is a way of passing a message to the thread. That's UI thread. The UI thread is the one that actually displaying things in a dialog box. Okay, so this handler will be invoked once in a while by the UI thread, and then that UI thread will actually receive the message, will actually get the message from the queue, and then we'll take a look at the value that is passed, and then it's going to use that value to set the progress. Okay, so that's how it's going to set the progress. So let's actually run that application. So let's run this guy. So while it's actually doing it, you can take a look at the Java documentation of handler. So handler allows you to send and process message and runnable object associated with a thread message queue. Every handler instance is associated with a single thread, and that's that thread message queue. So when you actually start the Android application, the UI is being run in a thread, okay, and that thread has handler associated with it. So handler is basically being able to read a message that is being passed to that thread. Okay, so what we have done in our code is we are actually using handler object as a way of passing the total value to the UI thread. Okay, so the UI thread will receive that total value and then set the dialog. Okay, let's see whether okay. So you can see the every 100 millisecond is actually updating the progress bar. Okay, yeah, so this is a bit complex. And question. All right, I think we have a question. Hold a second. So question from Phil, is progress dialog in activity considered modal and the progress dialog outside activity considered non-modal? Good question. Let me see. Yeah, I don't think it has actually something to do with the modality here. Okay, so basically basically when you are creating inside the activity, you are actually taking advantage of things that activity knows about. So it actually knows all the properties and all that stuff. Okay, so that is the difference. Okay, so let's move on to the next exercise. Exercise 7 is timer picker dialog. So, you can click this guy, and then we get the timer picker dialog. And basically, we are using the, creating just timer picker dialog. Again, we are creating under the context of activity because we are overriding on create dialog. Okay, and date is the same thing. Okay. All right. Okay, so exercise 8 is custom dialog. So when we run the first one, two buttons. When you click the first button, we create this custom dialog. So it says custom dialog 1 and hello, this is a custom dialog 1, and we have a Duke as image. When you click the second button, we have this dialog, so we don't have any text. Okay, so study the project. So again, we are creating this dialog within the in the onCreate dialog. Okay, so create the dialog and we set the content view, we set the title, and then we are setting the content view of those UI object, and then we return. Okay, so basically it gets displayed when the user is calling show dialog. So it works exactly the same as other dialog boxes. Okay, so here instead of, let's say, creating progress dialog, leveraging progress dialog class of Android platform, we are basically creating things ourselves using our own layout, and also setting the contents of the view objects in that layout. Okay, so that's pretty much work the same. Here we modify the object. We have okay, so we actually add another button in our custom dialog box. Okay, so that is it. And yeah, homework is basically the handler with the thread. Okay, so I think that's it. Let me just make sure I